Margaret, thank you for coordinating the food. And William, thank you for coordinating this. And thank you all for coming on a Friday night. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, now start.
Well, I know they don't have a life anyway, so that's why they're here.
Right here.
Yeah. Anyway, this particular show is of our bringing the boat back from Ireland last summer, from Ireland back to Canada, and
This was our second attempt to bring it home. We gave up the year before.
yeah. So,
Kalinka 1's our boat name.
Why did you give it up to your?
We ran out of time. It wasn't going to be, and we'd lost the weather window because of time. And Noel's mom turned 100, so we had to get home. She's now 101. But
so,
still.
yeah.
I thought maybe there was pirates or something involved.
No. We just ran out of time. So that is our boat sailing up from Oban up the Sound of Mull. So the island of Mull and the island of Skye, and we're going to Tobermory.
Yeah.
Now, how did your boat get there to begin with?
We sailed it.
We sailed to Ireland in 2012. Sally and I. We left Bonavista, Newfoundland, and we arrived in Cork, Ireland, 18 and a half days later.
That was funny. The lady says, so they help us tie up, because it's kind of what you do when you get into a sailing club. You just help each other. And she said, where'd you come from? Canada. She said, no, I mean today.
Yeah, Canada.
Canada.
Yeah. So, and then we've spent most of our time in Ireland, in Scotland, and 3 years up in Norway. And then the last few years it's been
We went to England.
England.
And got locked down.
Yeah. And this is in the head office of the boatyard where we've kept the boat for the last 12 years. I've got to pat the boss there in the head. If she liked you, you were in at the boatyard. If she didn't like you, you weren't. So.
And if you got frustrated with Noel not doing something the way he should have been doing it, and you went up and you cleaned the canteen, they loved you forever.
Yeah. Sally, yeah. And that's Michael, the owner of the boatyard, sitting there. And I think we're discussing over that bottle of scotch how much I was going to have to pay for keeping my boat there. But
and when Michael got frustrated with me, he called me Sadie, the dog's name.
So, and we got to be very good friends with Michael and his brother Stephen, and it was just, you almost didn't want to leave the boatyard when we were in the water. And it started in 2022. We left and we got up as far as Stornoway and had problems with the engine with bad fuel. And this is the way, that's the top of the fuel tank there that I happened to open right up.
Oh, you don't see the mouse move.
Huh? Right there.
Okay.
I can see the mouse move.
Okay.
Can everybody else see the mouse move? So we had to open it up, clean it all up, and then seal it all up again. And in the boatyard, we filled the thing with fuel. We left one morning, and we got down 18 miles down to a town called Kilmore Key, which is on the Celtic Sea, and it was 18 miles downstream from New Ross, where we'd kept the boat. And the engine quit, and I was 2 hours trying to get it running, and couldn't. So I put Sally was sailing the boat about a knot, 2 knots in speed. It wasn't much wind, but we were making headway. And when it got to the point where I couldn't fix the engine, I got up and we were getting close to the harbor, so I put in a security call to the Coast Guard.
Over the VHF radio, because it's an all-weather lifeboat station, harbor.
To tell them that we didn't have an engine and we were going to sail in, and if anybody happened to be on the radio who was in the harbor at Kilmore Key, to come out with a small boat and they could pull us in, because we were in the dredge channel, and then to get into the entrance to the harbor, It was a 90-degree turn to the left, and the
About 20 foot wide because they
Yeah.
had trawlers at
trawlers
the ice towers.
on big trawlers on both sides of the entrance, so your space in the middle was about 20 feet, so it was going to be short tacking. And the Coast Guard said, no, we're going to call out the lifeboat. I said, we really don't need a lifeboat.
It was a beautiful evening.
We need a rowboat will do the
stunning.
trick, you know. And they said, no. So they called out the lifeboat, and by then we've got a little closer to the harbor. And we knew Nicky, the harbor master, and we'd called him. He was out cutting his grass and couldn't hear the phone over the lawnmower. But anyway, the siren goes off in the town. We can hear the lifeboat crew running down the dock. That's how
We can
close
see
we
the
are.
lights coming on the boat.
The lights coming on. We hear the engine start up, and by now I can see the top of the lifeboat in the harbor. And so they put over a call, to what our position was. And Nicky, who was sitting up in his office, he said some bad words to the coxswain of the lifeboat and said, if you look up, you can see their blank, 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 blank sail. So they come screaming over the harbor, and by
Went
then,
past us.
like they came out so fast, and then they went probably an eighth of a mile past us before they could get slowed down and turned around to come back and get us. And I said, look, guys, go back in and come out with your rubber boat or something. No. So they threw us a line that was about this big around to tie on to us to pull us in. And we knew some of the crew on the lifeboat, too. So, and everybody's laughing.
Picture.
Next picture?
Yeah.
I'm telling a story, Sally. Anyway, so they come out, they tow us in. I said, right, if you're going to tow us in with this, you're just going to take us, you're going to put us right in on the pontoon beside your boat. What do you mean on the pontoon beside your boat? Well, that's the one we reserved, so that's where we're going. So they did that, and we got in there, and then we were 4 days with a mechanic trying to get things running, and finally did, and then we left there one afternoon to go up to where did we go?
Arklow.
And then we had problems, all year with bad
And
fuel.
we had fresh fuel. The fuel we put in the tank was from the boatyard. They run millions of machines off it. Michael was mortified. He couldn't believe, after all this scrubbing of the tank, letting it air all winter, that we had these problems. Anyway, we're still in the boatyard in this picture.
And this is
Johnny.
and he's down in the dry dock, and they put a big gate. So if you look down there, those are all like turnbuckles. Clamps. So that's what he's doing in the boatyard. And now he's checking them. And there's not much health and safety happening in Ireland. Because there's the lookout guy is up at the top, and he's actually not jumping in. He's just standing to make sure that Johnny's all right swimming down below. But the two brothers, they bought the boatyard because they had a big old trawler sailboat, and they wintered 1 year in the marina, and they got a bill for €3,600 for the electricity. And they had one bilge pump that came on once a week, and they had a string of Christmas lights. So they had an argument with the marina and the city, and the boatyard was across the river, and Michael went into the real estate, asked what the price was. They told him the price. He says, I'm not paying you that for it. This is what I'm going to pay you. So they got the boatyard, and then the two brothers, and they only bought it for a place to keep their boat. And then, because they're workaholics, they just kept improving, and now they can't take any time off.
So
They've got something like 20 employees. The dry dock, they'll put 2 boats in there at a time. They've got a big storage yard for small boats, and
you float in at high water, the tide goes out, and then they put the gate in.
yeah, and then that keeps the water out. And then if you need anything done to your car, they just bring the mobile hoist. Yeah. And down over there, you can see just the stern of our boat, and the scissors lift. And because we were there so long, the only piece of machinery they wouldn't let me use was the travel lift. And I got scissors lift or cherry pickers or any of the other stuff. So it was a little rough ride going through the yard, though.
Oh, okay. The year before, when we had packed it in, we got to Stornoway, waited for good weather, headed off twice. The first time, what happened? We had the weather changed,
Yeah.
and so 2 low pressures were getting married and becoming a super low, and we turned around and came back. And it was a beautiful Sunday afternoon, and every grandfather in the harbor had their grandsons out paddling, anything that would paddle. And it's like, this Danish boat comes up and says, "Are one of you hurt? Is somebody sick? We have a rental car. We can bring you to the hospital." It's like, no, the forecast changed.
Yeah.
And he had the same satellite weather thing. And he went back and he played on. He says, "Oh." And the next day, you couldn't walk against the wind.
Wow.
Anyway,
Yeah.
that we got back to New Ross that year, hauled out, and we needed a new cutlass bearing, which is the bearing in the strut
It
here.
sits right in behind the propeller.
When they went to take off the propeller, the hub, move your arrow so they can see your mouse it, the hub was cracked and it would have just fallen off. So they sent it to Max Prop in Italy and they said, "Oh, you're lucky this stayed together." So,
But we can't fix it, and we can sell you a brand new prop.
so this is the new propeller.
This is the new propeller, yeah. So, and it's a feathering propeller, so when you're sailing, the blades will go flat, and there's very little drag.
So at the
Cradle.
boatyard, we have a cradle that's bolted into the ground, all those extra blocks with wedges, and they've
And then
got
there's the straps that are tied.
5 straps, 1 at the bow, 2 midships, 2 at the stern.
Yeah.
And we've come back one year, we had a mud line about 4 inches up the keel.
And there's a 20-foot tide in the river, and then it's another probably 8 feet from the high tide to the concrete pad up here, and then we had 10 inches of mud on the keel. So what they had was a full gale blowing over the east
With spring tides.
with spring tides.
And lots of rain for all the mud.
That's not your boat, though, is it?
This is our boat.
Okay,
Yeah,
not your
yeah.
boat. I guess it's dark on the top there.
Yeah. And then we put
A
on
new
the
anchor windlass.
windlass.
And that's
This is the
Noel has a great collection of nail polish. There may be things you don't know about Noel, but he has a great collection of nail polish.
different colors. Yeah. I draw the line at sparkle though. I just can't do the sparkly stuff, right? Yeah. And that's us in the travel lift dock, and we're just getting launched there.
Again at high water, because at low water that's just mud.
Yeah. And now we're on our way from the boatyard.
And there's Michael on the wharf.
Yeah. And this is the Barrow River. That's the hook light at the bottom of the river, and that's the oldest operating lighthouse in Europe. The Vikings were the first ones to put it up with just a big bonfire. The Normans then increased it in size, and it's still running.
This is the southeast corner of Ireland, so you go in this way to Waterford.
Now this
Gas.
is the fuel. The green is the diesel fuel, and the white is emulsified with water. So it's just like milk and really
That's why
thick.
we couldn't get the engine running.
And that cost us 2 injectors because it won't.
Blew off the
diesel
ends.
fuel sprays. It gets and that's how. But with the water, it doesn't, and that blew out the end of the injectors. This is
May
celebrating
17th.
May Day, May 17th.
Not water.
Yeah.
Absolutely not water.
No.
Aquavit.
It is actually. It's aquavit. Water of life.
Fermented water.
So it's not supposed to separate like that?
No, it's supposed to just be
The
just
green.
supposed to be monocolor fuel.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Either
keep going. You'll
green,
see more
red.
pictures of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where did you get that fuel?
From the boatyard. They run all their machinery off diesel. Michael was mortified,
Yeah.
and that we had to get rescued by the lifeboat.
Yeah.
and the PR person was on the wharf, and she got the picture of the whole thing, and she comes down and says, "Can we have your consent to publicize this? It's the first, like, from start to finish rescue I've ever recorded."
yeah.
It was the shortest one ever.
Yeah, so it turned out to be the shortest,
Safest,
safest,
fastest.
and fastest rescue in the lifeboat history.
The next rescue they
And
went
it was
on,
us.
the next rescue they went on, a fisherman had lost his finger,
Yeah.
and he didn't report in for 2 hours because he had to finish the haul first.
Yeah.
And they medevaced him.
Yeah.
This seal has calved her pups on the slipway in Kilmore-Quay.
Yeah.
She's used to people. It's fun.
And she's big. You know, she's I'll bet you she's a table and a half long.
And are they curious? Like, is she,
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
they'll
yeah,
come up.
yeah.
Now, and she wasn't mooching food because
Yeah.
we didn't have any.
No. Well, they get fed from the fishing boats because they'll throw the scrap fish or whatever, and then the seals, they're not particular on what they eat. So this is the bottom end of the southeast corner of Ireland.
So this is turning the
Contra
corner to
point.
go up the Irish Sea. And you can't see it. It's 8.8 knots we're doing, which is, we've gotten a terrific lift from the tide.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
It doesn't make sense when you see the red tide there. But the currents are very strange, and you got to leave 2 hours before the tide changes. You get lifted there, and then you get lifted up to Dublin.
So because we're not sea people, or I'm not, the white part there, that's like
This?
the water. Even
That's
This
water.
is the ocean. Yeah, that's the ocean.
And the Tusker
this
Rock,
this is the Tusker Rock.
which is anybody who flies,
It's
That's
a
where
turning
they
point
turn.
for the aircraft going into England. That's one of their waypoints is Tusker Rock. But we run up the coast with the tide because you can't go against it.
So, when we got towed into Kilmore-Quay, the mechanic that put in our new diesel engine, our boat's 50 years old, and the engine's about 8 years old, happened to be the mechanic that worked on the lifeboat, and he was in Kilmore-Quay. So he said, "Look, why don't you rig a bypass to bypass your main tank for the fuel, but you always have to do the return as well." So anyway, we did all this plumbing. We weren't 8 hours out of Kilmore-Quay, and we had to rig the bypass system.
Yeah.
But then you have an open can of diesel ready to go flying. It's really hard to secure an open can of diesel inside.
And
So
we
that's
got
how
in-
we got through.
We got in Darklow, and we're refueling. And
Then we didn't have much trouble after Arklow. We had to get new injectors, and
Yeah.
the mechanic took the fuel, and he said, "The fuel's fine." Anyway, so we get going, and we go Northern Ireland, and then we go across
we went from Arklow, we ran the tide to Howth, which is just outside Dublin. And then from Dublin to Bangor,
which is Northern Ireland.
Northern Ireland. You can do that. You catch both tides, and you run with the tide, and we're up, and that's 96 miles, and we did it in 10 hours. So you can't go against that, but it's they just call it catching the bus. You go, you get hit it,
And you just got to run the tide, whatever time it happens.
and then from Bangor we went off to. We'd always wanted to go to Rathlin Island, and we bypassed it a dozen times, I guess, and then decided we were coming home, so we went in this year, and this is the harbor in Rathlin. And we were trying to decide from there where we were going to go, and we ran into a guy that really helped us out in Stornoway the year before.
Sunbathing seals.
And he said, well, we were going to a small island just east of there called Gia, where we liked. And he says, well, why don't you go over to Isla, because it's the Whiskey Week's on, the festival.
So guess where we
So
went.
we didn't even have to toss a coin for that one. We went to Rathlin Island, and it was on a
But
Sunday.
again, you had to catch the tide to go.
Yeah, and Had we known, we would have been up there sooner because we got there on the last day.
There's
These are
terrific
all
bird
allure.
sanctuaries.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and Rathlin Island has vicious tides around it.
Yeah, and currents. This is an upside down lighthouse. That's the light there
On the bottom.
at the bottom of it, and then that's the tower. And the access is from the top of the cliffs down into it.
So why wouldn't they have built that at the top of the cliff? Why wouldn't they have built a lighthouse like at the top of the cliff?
Because, they did. This is the third lighthouse.
Yeah.
The first one was too tall, they couldn't see it in the fog. And the next one was again too tall, they couldn't see it in the low cloud. So they put it down to where people could see it, where the fog clears.
Yeah. And this is Ardbeg Distillery, and because there's dragons in the north of Ireland and up there,
Getting the germination
they
going.
are the power source, the heat source to distill the
Well,
whiskey.
to germinate
so that's the
barley.
tails. They're in blowing their flame onto the vats and stuff to cook it,
And
and
people
then
were in costume, and it
Yeah.
was great fun.
Don't get any ideas to do that.
and for £10 we got three
3 shots for
Three-
10 pounds,
three shots
and a puzzle.
and a puzzle to fill out. And if you filled in the puzzle, you got another 2 shots of Irish whiskey, or
Of
Scotch
Scotch.
rather, and then they threw in a fish dinner with that, and that was okay. We got
Keep
that,
clicking.
but then as we were wandering around, there was girls in short skirts carrying the big double Magnum bottles of whiskey, and they would just fill up your glass. So it didn't take long.
And are those actual barrels?
Yeah, they're chairs.
They're chairs now, yeah.
And so you sat down at one of them, and you got the answer to the rest of the puzzle, and
Yeah,
then
and that there's one of the stills.
Fun time.
Yeah,
we'd gone there the year before, because so this is 2 different whiskeys.
and that
was the fish.
Yeah, that was fish dinner, smoked haddock.
Oh,
And
and
then-
rock and roll bagpipes at the community center. Oh my God, it was fun. I've never heard bagpipes other than a slow march, but they were just.
And she was good. That's the piper there, and she was quite good. And the other girl was the singer, but it was noisy. And then the next morning we left early. We're not sailing much, and this is
Because again, we're catching the tide.
yeah, and this is Dutch boat, and it's a private yacht.
Oh, these are the raised beaches of Jura. So it's
Yeah.
all
Tarbert.
glacial
Yeah,
topography, and they were really hard to walk on. Show the next picture. But we see
yeah. That's
We're
our
anchored.
boat anchored out there. That's our rubber boat, and the year before, the outboard engine I took to Ireland with us from here. I just couldn't get it started. I needed a part, which was a simple part, but they kept sending me the wrong one. So I got tired. We couldn't wait. So I gave that motor and a full tank of gas to the lifeboat in Oban, and then was able to find another outboard like on eBay over there or Craigslist or something, and bought that, and it ran. And then this year I'd taken it or last year I'd taken it in to have it tuned up, and the mechanic says, I'm not touching this motor. He says, it's going to blow apart. And being a little hard of hearing, I couldn't hear the thing knocking. And so we had to buy a new outboard, and that's it on the back of the dinghy. And the mistake we made is it's a 4-stroke, and it weighs 100 and some odd pounds. And I can't pick that up anymore.
it's too heavy.
It's
Anyway,
but I've got Sally, and she's getting some upper body strength, so we're okay. This is in the harbor in Oban. These are jellyfish.
and you couldn't,
You
They
didn't
were
want to jump
everywhere.
in, yeah, and
not a chance.
yeah, yeah, and as deep as you could see in the water, which is a long way down because it's clean, it was like this. It was just full of them. Seals like them.
This is Tobermory. And, so we left because we had a 6-day weather window.
Yeah.
So suddenly we had a very good weather window. And
Yeah.
you don't get that this far north. So it's like, excellent, let's go. Well, real man would have stopped at this island, which is
The St. Kilda.
Kilda's.
Yeah.
And it's the outermost of the Outer Hebrides. And after the war, it got depopulated, but they hadn't taken all the sheep off. And the size of the sheep have gone much smaller without human intervention.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, the original plan coming home was to go up to the Outer Hebrides, then to the Orkneys, Fair Isles, Shetlands, Faroes, and then across to Iceland. Because doing it that way, they're overnight sails. Like from Stornoway to the Orkneys is about 10, 11 hours sailing.
and you're in 24-hour daylight.
And then from the Orkneys to Fair Isle, again, is about 11, 12 hours. Fair Isle to Shetlands, about the same. Shetlands to the Faroes is a day and a half. Faroes to Iceland is a day and a half. Iceland to Greenland is a day and a half. Greenland to Labrador is 4 days. So it's no wonder that the Vikings got to North America, and the Irish may have been here too before the Vikings.
But there's a reason whiskey is a national drink in Scotland.
Because it's cold, wet.
And then aquavit in Iceland. I mean, they need it.
Yeah.
That was taken
that was
about
gonna
2
be
in the morning.
So that was going to be the route.
That was
but-
2 in the morning. That was as dark as it got.
Yeah. But when we had the 6-day window, we just left Stornoway and headed for Iceland, and we were there in 5.5 days. Motored most of the way.
But it was motor sailed and it was sloppy. And you can see our radar reflector we dropped down. And it's not great visibility, so you'd want to have it up. But it was just, the ocean was so confused and sloppy. We went up 2 degrees from the Barra Sound and then down 4 and then back up 5 degrees.
Yeah.
So the ocean was very confused.
And this is the coast of the Westman Islands, which are off the south coast of Iceland.
The corner, south coast. And
And they're called the Westman Islands. When the Vikings would go to Ireland, they'd grab all the women, some men, and as slaves, and they kept them on these islands, and they just kicked them off the boat because they weren't going to escape and go anywhere.
there was
So-
only one well for fresh water on the whole island.
Yeah. Now this, because it's all lava cliffs, this is one of the navigation marks to get into the harbor.
But it's about 80 feet in the air.
So it's for big boats. But these are all lava cliffs.
That's the harbor wall.
Yeah. Lots of birds, puffins. Now that's about $20 Canadian.
Icelandic
Iceland,
money.
kroner.
ISK, they call it.
Yeah. This is the remains of a house from the 73 eruption.
We went past islands that were 1970s eruption.
Yeah. And the half the town is 15 meters underground now,
Buried.
buried because of the lava and stuff.
And the ash that flew.
ash. And what they did, they dug down to one house and then built a museum over top of it. So you go into the museum, and then you go downstairs in the museum, and you're into the original ground level. And the people who lived in that house are still alive.
And everybody got evacuated. And then the fishermen went back and sprayed water to keep the harbor.
Yeah.
Because this is the main fish processing harbor for Iceland.
And they were able to stop the lava flow
And
the-
build a
which
bigger
would-
harbor.
and build a safer harbor. So, and now again, health and safety. This is a kid, and he's hanging on a rope.
He's
and
being
they
taught
hu-
how to pick seagull eggs.
Yeah. And the only way you can get the eggs, you have to do it by rope. And the cliffs are quite high, so they start the kids young. And if they fall down, they fall down. They'll be seen. And at the end of it, they can go harvest eggs. Now these are copies of two of the original houses they found on the island, and those were built probably in the 800s.
By Vikings or by who?
By the Vikings, yeah.
This was also the only place where there was well water. So these islands, even though they process all this fish and have a considerable population, get the water piped over from the mainland.
Yeah.
The sheep are mostly pets right now.
The sheep all get along.
The sheep are mostly pets. They
don't use the wool anymore because there's no market for it. So this is downtown Reykjavik. This is Harper Center, which is music hall, studios, office, a whole bunch of different things. This is our boat here. And the end, the one boat next to us is a young German guy. He had just come in, and he 41 days at sea coming up from the Caribbean to Iceland. Did it all by himself. And we got talking to him. He says, well, by yourself? Yeah, he says, I just put the self-steering on. I go below, play video games.
He had
alarms for everything on his boat.
A radar detector.
Yeah.
So if there was any ship out there, with their radar on, because most of the ships run with it all the time, he could detect it. We had a beacon going out for our position. Yeah. If a polar bear gets to Iceland, they just shoot it, because they can't give it back to Greenland, because Greenland doesn't want them
back because they're afraid of
they're islands, and they're very protective of their livestock. Polar bears were a problem because we were going to, from here, we were waiting for the ice to clear. We couldn't import a gun to scare away polar bears. Polar bears are really good at climbing onto slippery ice.
And boats.
So they have no bother at all climbing onto a boat.
This is a Viking sandwich.
That's about a $30 lunch.
Yeah. Well,
yeah. 2
beer and what do we have? 2 beer anyway were $35. So
2 coffees were the same.
Yeah. And then the Vikings have a festival in Iceland every year, so this is what
they don't care if it's pouring rain. They just still have fun. Yeah. Because it's almost always pouring rain.
This is the cathedral in Reykjavik.
We went there to the church service, which of course was in Icelandic, but they sang "Be Thou My Vision" as the last hymn. It was great.
Yeah. And this down here is a statue of Leif Erikson.
Lutheran.
Yeah. Is Leif Erikson, and it was donated by the Americans in the 20s for finding America, but we really didn't know that until the 60s. And then this, we did a bus tour, and this is a bunch of our closest friends.
The tectonic plates.
This is the divide between the North American plates and the European, and across that, and Iceland is spreading apart a little bit every year, and this is the center of it. So eventually, it'll be two land masses.
And they had it very well organized for tours, because the bus let you off here, picked you up there.
And you walk down, and then up in there's the bus park. But it's also where the first parliament in Europe was held by the Vikings back in the 800s.
I love the patterns.
Yeah. This is the drowning pool. And if you're a woman, and this is where they had the courts too for the whole country at the same here. If you're a woman and got condemned, they drowned you in this pool.
Publicly, you know.
Publicly, just and they made sure you were drowned.
And if you were male, they just hung you.
Well, no, they took you in the field and chopped your head off. But anyway, so This is Gullfoss, which is the biggest waterfall in Iceland.
It was stunning. We had lovely videos, but then we lost the camera that day.
Yeah.
Oh, this is
The lake where everything is, and that's steam coming up out of the water.
go to the next one.
And then this is a baptismal.
Font where Olaf converted everybody to Christianity because, they weren't going to get cold in the process.
Yeah, but that's hot water.
It was beautiful. I stuck my hand in it. It was perfect.
Is it a hot spring?
Oh,
Yeah.
the whole country.
They love their hot water.
Nobody has a hot water tank. Everything's pumped in. All the hot water for heating.
You can't do a clothes wash in cold water.
Yeah, it's just yeah.
They don't have cold water.
And then this is just
Hot spring.
by the geyser, a hot spring, and that was 100 degrees Celsius in there. This is the geyser. This is the old geyser.
Getting geysered.
And I got geysered. I figured I'm going to get,
Eddie
and
had
I
a
got
fabulous video of it, and we lost the camera.
lost the camera. So I'm standing there, and I couldn't figure out why there was nobody on this side of me. Everybody was kind of up there. And when the geyser went up, I found out because I was soaked. The water was warm. And then this is a crater for one of the volcanoes. And then there's a bunch of people. You do a tour and you walk around the top of it. And up there, some places where I lost the camera, it fell out of my pocket. So this is one of the hot tubs outside Reykjavik.
There were 7 within easy busing of downtown Reykjavik.
Is this the Blue Lagoon?
No. No, there's more. Well, you'll see that.
Yeah, yeah.
So this-
but this is just there. I forget. There were 7 swimming pools within the city. They all had a big hot tub. They all had
Showers, swimming pool.
swimming pool, a length pool, just an ordinary swimming pool, diving board, sauna, steam room, and just about all the business in Iceland is done in a hot tub. And
Maybe
people-
not like a vestry meeting, but if we were going to meet and sort something out, like William and I sorting out getting together to do this,
You do it in a hot tub.
you do it in a hot tub.
And that's where,
It's what they all did.
And
We
then-
didn't figure this out until we got to
yeah,
Reykjavik.
yeah. And then there's the beach. And then that water there is warm water. And that water out there is ice water.
Yeah.
These are the last 2 whale catchers in Iceland. And they're now shut down. Iceland last year
Stop.
voted to stop whaling. And they, up until last year, everybody else wanted to stop, and they told everybody else to take a hike. And then last year they decided themselves to do it, and it was their choice, nobody else's. So they've shut down the whaling. And this is on the Isle of
Fiddly.
Fidley.
And we went out there, and that was on the ferry that this man said, yeah, it wasn't Greenpeace that told us. We chose as a country to
Yeah.
stop whaling. But
That's
they
just
had a big chess tournament for teenagers out here.
in
Chess is huge
that
in
country,
Iceland.
Yeah. Now this is the propeller from the Canadian destroyer
Skeena.
Skeena that went ashore in a snowstorm and gale up there and was wrecked. And there was 8 fatalities, and the fatalities were guys who abandoned ship,
Panicked.
panicked and abandoned ship in a small boat and were drowned. But the ship just stayed on the rocks till the next day, and then everybody else survived. And then that was the propeller.
And then it slid back. Everybody got off, and then it just slid backwards and sunk quite deep.
Yeah. And this is what Sally and I do is a thing called geocaching.
So we're looking for a geocache.
So there's a geocache here. There's all kinds of them all over the world, but that's this is a rowing boat. and there was 2 guys and a girl
I think
that
so.
were crew, and their plan was to row across the North Atlantic,
The Northwest Passage.
and then through the Northwest Passage. And then this big aluminum boat was an American boat. They were going to go through the Northwest Passage. Neither of those people were going to bother to contact Canadian immigration. Everybody was waiting in Reykjavik
For the ice to clear.
because the ice had packed in between Greenland and Iceland, and they couldn't get across to the main city in Greenland or get down around the corner. So that kept us in Iceland. And then when that cleared, the ice pack moved into the north of Labrador, so we couldn't get ashore in Labrador. But by the time we had got to Iceland, Sally was fed up. She wasn't going to do any more. And I didn't have the energy to do any more. And we tried to get crew. That didn't work. Looked at getting a delivery skipper, and that wasn't going to work. So we decided to put the boat on a ship and ship it to Canada.
Every week there's a boat.
Yeah.
From Reykjavik to Halifax. Every week.
Yep.
Because
But this
everything in Iceland's imported.
Yeah, this is the day that the volcano started, and that's the cloud. That night, we were sleeping on the boat in the harbor and heard the boom, and then the boat was vibrating in the sea. So there was a
And
sea
the water
pressure.
temperature rose about 2 degrees.
Yeah.
Can I ask
Were
you?
you nervous?
Nobody else was. so
Nobody
you
else
weren't.
cared. They
It
were
was-
having
It
four.
was weird.
Yeah.
Like, they were just, yeah.
Yeah, we got these all. They were having 427 tremors a day before that went up. So, and no, this happens all the time.
So we brought the boat to Hafnarfjord to haul out.
And I found my Valentine.
Oh.
Now,
This is Sky Lagoon. This is July 14th. my
Sally's birthday.
Just in case you want to
Yeah.
know, my birthday is July 14th.
Yeah. And this was a new lagoon that they built. I think it was the first year that it was open, but it was a municipal bus ride to it.
And it's called Sky Lagoon. And Customs said, are you going to go to one of the hot baths? Yes. Sky Lagoon, not or Blue Lagoon. Sky Lagoon, not
Yeah.
Blue Lagoon. Everybody goes Blue Lagoon.
So we went to Sky Lagoon.
It was a lot of fun. And it's
Warm
kind of
water.
weird to be in a swimming pool with cameras going everywhere.
Yeah.
But everybody had their cameras going.
Yeah. And this is Main Street in Reykjavik.
This was one of our $35 beers.
And then we were doing the bus tour. This is another one of the big waterfalls.
The
Just southwest,
South Coast tour.
yeah, of it. And this is
They
called
were very expensive tours, but you couldn't have done it if you weren't being driven because, again, because of the 24-hour daylight, they would do whale watching tours starting at 10 at night. They didn't care. It was a short season.
yeah.
And
then
so
this is
It was,
the
they were
black
12-hour
the
tours.
Black Beach, for obvious reasons. But you don't swim in there unless you're in a wetsuit or dry suit.
Puffins.
And what's interesting with the puffins on the Westman Island, which is a big breeding ground, the puffins, when they're kicked out of the nest and they can't fly, but they can glide. So they glide down into the sea
Towards the moon.
towards the moon, and then that's how they imprint where to come back to. But the problem is with street lights and things now that the puffins were getting kicked off the cliffs and they were gliding down into the streets
And into the harbor.
and into the harbor where they couldn't.
So for about 2 weeks of the year, all the kids would gather up the little fledglings and bring them back up to the bird sanctuary every evening. And for a couple of hours, they tried to dim the lights. They couldn't turn them off because there are navigation aids and things. But that was part of the fun of what you do.
As a kid in Iceland.
And
This
one
is
of them,
just-
they tagged a few, and one of them was 37 years old. They live a surprisingly long time.
and these basalt columns in this sea cave, and those columns, that rock formation comes right through from Labrador, Newfoundland,
Giant's Causeway in Ireland,
and then into Iceland, and
Iona, Fingal's Cave.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
and then right across into Norway. That's one of their glaciers.
now this is Blue Lagoon.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be healthy mud. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Now we've got the boat hauled over the water. This is the crew chief telling everybody what to do, and his main man helper
Marcus with the ladder.
Yeah,
We ended up enlisting his help when we got to Hafnarfjord and said, we don't know if it's a language thing or what, but we don't think we're getting the full story, and can you help us?
yeah,
And he was, humdy-haw, bottle of wine. Okay, I'll give him a call.
yeah.
And then block of cheese. Anyway, we just
Yeah.
kept
But
the
we-
goodwill up. And we
Yeah.
had to organize for a cradle. We had to
Which is
organize to
this.
get hauled out. And the problem was the country was doing a nationwide shutdown for 2 weeks. But not for 2 weeks.
Yeah, in 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks' time. So,
Yeah.
so they didn't want to do any work because they wanted to be able to shut down.
Yeah. So anyway, we're putting the boat onto the shipping cradle or container, and this is part of the cradle which we have here. It all comes apart, and we can carry it, take it apart, and most of it will fit in the car.
So then we get it on the ship, and Marcus, who was helping us, said, I don't think that man at M-Skip has anything between his ears. Because then he said, oh, well, we can't ship it because it's not on the cradle right. Well, your lorry picked it up,
And
and
the
we had
lorry
to strap
driver,
it all down,
yeah.
and then we had to hammer it into place with blocks of wood, and Marcus helped us with all that. It was the best use of old cruising guides. Now, he doesn't do anything in Iceland with his boat. He goes to Scotland and spend his vacation hauling out and scraping the bottom.
Yeah.
So we ended up flying to Halifax,
Halifax.
and having some time to kill.
So, Sally went and lifted the light at Peggy's Cove so they could fix the foundation.
Halifax.
Halifax. And this is a pipe laying ship that was in Halifax Harbor.
We stayed on the base at Shearwater because of my cadets. And so we had cheap accommodation, and we managed to get a hire car.
But this is
The paw.
on a polder on the west coast of Nova Scotia, and it was
What-
Belgians, I think, that came in, and this is all reclaimed land.
And the patterns of all the fields haven't changed since the
Yeah,
later 1800s.
Yeah.
And okay, we get there after the roads to Peggy's Cove had washed out, after immense rainfalls, because the weather had been nasty. And then it's a really wet, miserable day. We're going to meet my buddies at Tim Hortons.
and this is
It's
the Tim
lashing
Hortons
rain,
parking
and
lot.
they're still playing in puddles. They
And that-
kept our boat hostage for a week
in
because
Halifax.
Vancouver was on strike. And I think they were just persecuting low-hanging fruit. I don't know. But they kept it for a week. And
Yeah, this Halifax Harbor.
they blocked it in with machinery.
Yeah, and at $340 a day.
Anyway,
That we didn't have to pay. The shipping company picked that up. It was funny though, because I didn't know how we were going to get the boat off the ship. I thought that the ship in Iceland, that they'd just use one of their cranes, pick it up, stick it onto a cradle on the ship, and away they go. But we had to go do all the running around.
we had to buy a cradle.
And in Halifax, for contacted MSkip again, and they didn't seem to know what to do about customs and stuff. So we went up to the customs office, and he said, you know, our boats come in, and I need to clear it into the country. Well, I've got to fill in this form. I do that, and then she's got, can you prove that you own the boat? I said, yeah, sure I can. The registration, everything's on the boat. That's not going to help. You can't go on your boat. Well, that's the only way I can get it. Well, you can't go on there until it's cleared by customs.
And because we'd been 12 years,
Yeah.
they didn't have all our back and forth at Lake Ontario crossings.
Oh.
They couldn't access that. Oh.
So anyway, and I talked to two girls. The first girl didn't want any part of doing it, and an older woman came over, and she was the one that was going on about not being able to get on the boat, but she was grinning at me. So I figured, okay, this is going to be fun. And we went back and forth, and I said, and she says, well, you're not going to go home, are you, to get the copy of the? So no, I'm not going to go to Toronto. We'll put the boat back in the water, and I'll go back to Iceland. She says, nah, you don't want to do that. She says, I might go down to your boat. And I says, well, it's in the nav table. It's really easy to find. It's a big blue book, and it's in a Ziploc bag. And so she says, nah, maybe. So as I'm going out the door, I said, look, if you go on board the boat, the beer's in the bilge, and it'll be cold. And then she says, no, there's no beer on the boat. There isn't any, because that's the first thing they want to know is how much alcohol you've got, right? Says, well, okay, there's no, yeah, all right. But if you happen to, and then anyway, she went down, one of the guys went up, so the next week we got the clearance to go down and get the boat, so that was good. And then this is at the Dartmouth Yacht Club. We're up in there, travel lift, getting the boat launched. Got the mast up, sails on, and now we're leaving Halifax to come home. And we finally didn't get it cleared until just this side of Quebec City. But we went up the coast, spent a night in Country Harbour, unhooked, left there, and then we're going up, and we take a shortcut up in between that island and, and the mainland.
This is going into Canso Strait, so Cape Breton. We cut the corner. We didn't go around the outside of Cape Breton. We went up.
And a sunny day in Canada.
Rivière au Renard. We were there for a long time.
Yeah.
Because the wind was howling. And the wind against the St. Lawrence, you don't want to mess with
No.
this.
And then the
This
fishing
is
fleet.
going in at
Early
4 in the morning.
Yeah.
We had to change all our cables
From European,
back to Canadian.
yeah. And we had to sew up the Dodger. This is the harbor at St. Anne-de-Mont, and we came in there in the dark, and they changed the whole harbor since we were there before. We would come before you'd come across and then in over here, but they filled that in, so they changed the whole harbor layout, and pitch black, and not much water and space through there, and we didn't know how close we were to this point, except the cormorants were on there and started to squawk.
So literally one flock of cormorants came at us from this side, and then the next flock came at us from that side, and we just kept going in the middle.
And then we got tied up, and
Oh, it was a dark night.
This is back in Toronto now?
No.
Oh, sorry.
no. We left there, and now we're into sunshine. This is Matane Harbor on the.
We had trees
Cascade.
flowing down the river past us because it had been so wet.
Yeah.
And our buddy Carl and Patty came and joined us because we were exhausted.
Yeah. Quebec City.
There's Patty. Noel negotiating, and we killed that bag of wine.
Yeah. not me. Her and her.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. This is Three Rivers, or Troy Rivera. And then Carl and I then came through the locks while the girls were doing girl stuff
It was
in
lovely.
the car.
We drove an hour and it took them all day.
Yeah.
So we had all kinds of shopping and
And this is at the bottom of the Bolsaleu locks, and this is a big power plant. It's there in the St. Lawrence River. And this is the first time that we've been in a lock that they put us in behind a commercial ship. And the problem for us was they kept their propellers turning, and they would turn up the water. So we were constantly fighting
so you have water boiling underneath you
to
as you're
keep
being
us
lifted
away
up.
from the walls.
And then you have water coming back from their props.
Yeah.
Why were they running the props?
Just
For control. They were
they
just
could
controlling
control their
their.
boat with the two props. Yeah.
This is the Cornwall.
This is in Cornwall, and this is coming out in the morning. We're going in. We're going into Cornwall at night, and there's a story about that coming out. Now we're just going into the harbor. They stayed open for us to get fuel
In Cornwall.
in Cornwall, and then the next morning we left, and then we were coming out, and we got too close to that, and we came around this corner, and we went up on the rocks like hard. We hit
6.5 knots.
6.5 knots, and we came up about that high onto the rock.
And then
of
fell
course,
over.
now we're kind of perched up there. Early in the morning, wondering what the heck we're going to do. A sailboat came out behind us, took a bunch of pictures. We asked them to stand by and maybe take a halyard from our mast, because that will tilt the boat. Because we called Coast Guard, told them what had happened. They said, well, too bad, because we were talking to a girl in Montreal, and she said, we don't have any boats around Cornwall. You're on your own. Let us know how you make out. So anyway, the sailboat, he took off and left, and then another guy came out from his cottage who was looking out the window while he was having his morning coffee, came out in a pontoon boat, and he says, first question, were you taking on any water? I said, no, we're just stuck. He said, well, throw me a halyard. So he used a term that maybe he knows what he's doing, and threw that off the top of the mast. He hooked at the back of his pontoon boat, and what that does is pulls us sideways, and the mast, like a lever, just pulls the boat right over. It decreases your draft, and then we just popped off, still didn't take any water, and then continued on our way. And then I was paying more attention to the marks.
And this is a new mark and an old mark.
This is
Prescott.
Prescott, and that's the old lighthouse, and then the new lighthouse. Some more sunshine.
Kingston.
Kingston.
Look at this slip. We're looking right up the main drag.
Yeah. Sally joined the boat, and we're finally in sunshine and shorts, coming through the Murray Canal, which is from the Bay of Quinte, gets you through out to the open lake.
There was a hurricane coming up the eastern seaboard, so again we were trying to stay in the good weather.
And this boat is owned by the rear commodore of our yacht club, and we were waiting for the bridge to open. He was sitting behind us, and Sally says, I think that's Ron Whitten. And I looked and I said, yeah, okay. And it turned out to be him, and then...
and he was doing the same thing. That boat's awfully familiar in front of us.
Yeah. So Sally phoned him, and he says, I thought it was you. Whitby Harbor, early in the morning.
Toronto. And this skyline, man, oh man, has it ever changed since we left?
And now we're coming back into the harbor at Mimico. And there we are, tied up in front of our clubhouses up here. And there we are, and this is all the countries that we visited.
Oh, nice.
I think that's it. Oh,
And
this is Ross, our cat.
good cat, very quiet. Don't feed it. And that's that. That got us home.